southern railroad line on a drowsy August day. There came a man from across the tracks, stopped the childish play. He said, son, don't you make no game today. I remember the words he said. He said, Franny Walraven's sick, you know. With a bad pain in his head.
Thank you, everybody, for coming on this gorgeous Vermont day. It's certainly better than yesterday, so we couldn't ask for much more. This is a very exciting and historic moment for us and for this station, and it's restarting. Appropriate that the bell from the train rang it in. Amazing we had that bell. I would like to start by recognizing what this is all about today, Archie Prevost and his son Tom. I'd like to shout out to Jerry over there for the fabulous exhibits of the trains of the St. J and LC. Incredible love of a project for sure. And also Steve Wright for this gorgeous music he's been playing, and he will do a feature special for us shortly. So I'd like now to read to you a proclamation from the governor from when we were going to meet last time, which we didn't follow through with. This is from the governor. Whereas the Danville Railroad Station on Peacham Road was built and received its first train in 1871, making Danville the first town to have a railroad station along the route of the Vermont Division of the P&O Railroad. And whereas the Danville Railroad Station brought an influx of tourism from surrounding cities of the area, drove economic opportunity with the movement of dairy, produce, and goods to markets as far as Boston, New York, Philadelphia. And whereas, they love whereas, in the 1970s, the Danville Historical Society started preserving the railroad station and eventually leading the town of Danville being to dealer ownership in 1993. And whereas the town of Danville celebrates its 150th anniversary of the Danville train station and the significant history and impression it had on this community. Now therefore, I, Philip B. Scott, proclaim August 7th, 2021 as the Danville Train Station Day in Vermont. Now I'd like to turn it over for a moment to our historian, Executive Director of Danville Historical Society, Hattie Conley.
Thank you. I want to welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This is really a significant day for us. Just having people come in and see what a beautiful building we have here and the potential that we have for the future. Thank you to all our special guests, to Steve Wright, to our special guest of honor, Archie Prevost, and Jerry Gray over there, and everyone who has come to help us celebrate today the 150th anniversary of the opening of the station. I'm not going to go on about the history. There's a lot out there with newspaper articles and things, and we've got a lot of it displayed here. And we want to save a few things to come when we finally get the building totally restored and we're able to display some of the permanent beautiful photographs that we have of the station itself. I was a little bummed today when I woke up and I saw the weather, and I thought, oh, gee. But as I started thinking about it, you know, imagine what it must have been like through all of those years for all the people that worked on the railroad, the section men, the engineers, the conductors, and all the different difficult weather conditions that they had to work through. Whether it was rains and washouts and snow and ice and digging out the crossings. I'm sure, Archie, you can attest to how difficult that was. So I thought, you know, if they can do it, we can do this. So there are many, many landmarks. days surrounding the opening of this station, when it opened in August, and then the arrival of the first train the end of September, and then finally telegraph equipment was installed in the ticket office, and the exciting day that they sent out the first telegraph message. So just imagine what it must have been like for the town of Danville at that time and how exciting it must have been. It just opened up a world of possibilities for passenger travel, for freight travel, and it also was a significant boost to the economy of the town of Danville. So here we are today. We've kind of come full circle. There's no more rails out there, but we still have the beautiful rail bed, the 93-mile rail bed, that was the path of first the P&O, then the St. John Lake Champlain, and then finally the Lamoille Valley Railroad. So once again, that rail bed will serve to bring people to the town of Danville and to all the towns along the whole route as a boost to their economy, and people can enjoy the beautiful scenery along the route. So we're really looking forward to getting this building back to its original glory, so that people that are enjoying the rail trail today can have a place to come in and celebrate the history. Really, without this building, we wouldn't have the history of the railroad. It would just eventually probably be forgotten, which would be really terrible. So that's why we're so anxious to get this building renovated and be able to let everyone come in and enjoy it. So I have a special connection with this building because I grew up right across the way in that little brown shingle house on the corner. And so there was never a question when the train was rolling through. My bedroom with the 2 windows that we could look out and see. And so I always could listen to the whistle. I knew when the train was coming, and boy, sometimes it was a real pain because those trains used to be really long in the day. There were maybe 25 or 30 cars, and it never failed. If you had to be somewhere in a hurry and the train was coming through, you were just out of luck. You just had to wait. And as everybody knows, the St. John LLC was never really noted for being punctual and on time. So it was a pretty slow process. But anyway, so I share a love of the railroad. I share a love of this building, much like our wonderful musician who's here with us today, and he'll get to that in a little bit. So again, thank you very much. I really appreciate everyone coming, and we're looking forward to the day when we can have more programs and special events in this beautiful building. So
thank you. Just a quick background of how we got where we are now, where we are, and where we're going. In 2018 through 2019, Kate Whitehead, who's in here somewhere, headed up a committee called Better Connections, a grant that we received from the state, to determine what the roadblocks and the advantages in Danville were to creating more connected activity, more recreational activity, and to bring more economic dollars into the town of Danville. One of the major findings, as you would expect coming out of it, is this was a major asset that was being totally underutilized as a recycle center. And that this has the possibility of reconnecting the economic activity that's been lost by bringing more recreational-based activity into Danville. So we went to the planning committee, of which Kate and I are both members of, went to the select board and asked for a committee. We asked them to form a committee to determine how to use this station and to raise the money and fix it once and for all. They just turned around and said, well, good, we'll give that back to you. You guys go back out, form yourself a committee, and report in to us and get started on it. We are now about 9 months into the process. We have an incredible collection of volunteers. We're broken up into 3 different groups. Sally, where are you? Sally Fishburne, Preservation Restoration Contractor, Danville's own, but works all over the state. With Rob Balave, architect returned from Alaska back as a Danville boy. And Ross Meters, who is an interesting young man that started working on studying this station when he was doing his senior paper, I believe, at Danville High School. Is that right?
No, Moss Tech.
Oh, Vermont Tech, I'm sorry. Vermont Tech, sorry. I knew you were older than that, Ross. Ross has crawled through every inch of this building. He knows the size of every timber, every beam. He's looked at every joint. He's been a sleuth to determine what happened over 150 years to this building. And what do we want to preserve and what do we want to restore to feed that information into Sally's group. I would like Ross actually to step up here for a minute, because in the process of his sleuthing, he actually uncovered something that none of the rest of us know about. Ross.
Okay. So I was, on the 4th of July, I was measuring beams in the attic right above us. And I was actually looking above this window frame right here, and I found all these papers. And we had an archivist in the station at one point, and our archivist was a squirrel. A squirrel had built their nest up there, and now we have a record. Well, we have mostly records of freight, delivery checks, documenting freight delivery between 1889 and 1905. I didn't even count how many documents there are in here. There are probably more than 100. And I've scanned them. They're all in PDF format. If any of you would like to see these, they're here. They're going to be here today, but if you'd like to see them later, they're also in a Google Drive folder, which I will be here through this whole event, and you can come find me. You can identify me by my sweater, and I will share that with you. We can exchange emails. And anyway, I'm going to hand this over to Patty now. And
Thank you.
yes, of course.
Thank you, Ralph. If you go to his website, you'll actually see some of the special findings that points to a squirrel. He didn't make a copy of those, however. The second committee we have is the committee that's trying to determine the use of this building. That's headed up by Kate Whitehead. Where are you, Kate? Kate Whitehead, right there, that you did Better Connection. Sits with Patty Conley from the Historic Society. Laurel Ruggles, you're here somewhere. Laura was very involved with some of the other work that was done when she was at NVRH. Allison Lowe, who works for the NVDA and does a lot of the Northern Vermont Development Association, is one of their chief grant writers. Ted Hool, who's our consummate cyclist that keeps bringing the cycling back to our discussions at every time. Keith Gattapi, who maintains the trail, said by VTrans to be the best section of trail maintenance in the state of Vermont. And Sam Pacala, our former, I'll find the word in a minute, veterinarian, who has been working on all the four-legged people that run up and down the path as we try to determine how to keep them out of the way of the bikes and the walkers. And then finally, Kitty Toll heads the funding, which she will probably be contacting you all shortly. Supported by Tim Ide and Peter Crosby, the former CEO of Something Savings Bank. We have a great team working hard. We've been at this about 7 months. Right now, our focus is get the building fixed, get the structure done, get it painted, put the canopy back, put the platforms back, fix this portion into a comfort station with 2 bathrooms, one an ADA bathroom. You wouldn't want to go in either of those rooms right now. And Patty, the Historic Society, will be in residence here with rotating exhibits on a continuous basis. Chamber of Commerce will have some, perhaps a digital display in here of businesses, where they are and what they're doing. And then outside, a very large kiosk that points you in all directions for Danville. Not just the rail trail, but the other trails. That side of the building, that's the dilemma that we're working on. The dilemma is actually an exciting one, because we can With the right tenant, we can put the end back on the building. We've lost about 1,000 square feet of the building that used to be attached in the back. That'd give us a lot more space to work with, which gives a better chance to get a tenant who could support the maintenance of this building long-term and keep it off the town register and keep it taken care of. Run the platforms out, run the platform 50 yards or so, I guess, down the trail, so we could put some Susano umbrellas and some tables out there and people can camp out and enjoy the ride. That would be the great vision. And then the longer-term vision deals with more of this area, and we have to solve parking, as you can tell. If we don't solve parking, we'll have nothing but complaints from all of our neighbors going forward. That's the team. That's what we're doing. We've just had some really good news. We just raised, we got a grant for $75,000 from Vermont Housing and, oh, Michael, come on. Vermont Housing and something.
Conservation?
Conservation Board, thank you. And another $7,500 for them to pay for the easement writing and documentation of historic preservation that we have to maintain as we put this building together. We're just now applying for a $22,000 grant from the municipal planning grant to be able to handle the architectural and structural engineering work that needs to be done. And then we're in line for the Preservation Trust of Vermont, putting us forward to the Freeman Foundation for $50,000 to aid in the construction. And the town has committed $50,000 in grant matching funds for us. So if you add that up, we're starting to get up closer to where we need to be, which we're not quite sure where that is, but it's somewhere around 300,000 plus, depending upon how much we do in the back part. So we're very confident we can get this done, and with the community support to fill in around the edges, we'll be there. Enough about all that, because what we're really here for is this man. His middle name is Railroad, as you probably know. And I think, Steve, this would be a good time to introduce the St. J and LC line.
All right.
Do you want this back over there?
Now, when I grew up in West Danville. And of course, they get some weather in West Danville, as most of you I'm sure know. And growing up as a kid, my mom worked, she was a nurse in St. Johnsbury, worked at the hospital there, and she worked the night shift. And so at 10 o'clock, she would have to leave every night to go to work. And about 9 o'clock, the train would go by. And in the wintertime, the train would have a snow plow on the front. And if you've ever seen the big plows that the trains would push, it was quite a sight to see. And there was a lot of snow in West Danville. So about 9 o'clock, my father would come in and get me, and it was all hands on deck, because we had to shovel the driveway, because the railroad tracks crossed our driveway. We'd have to shovel that out so we could get my mother to work on time. Now, it was quite a feat. We'd go out there and we would shovel and shovel. And the train would leave these giant snowbanks. You'd work for half an hour and you'd finally punch through that first side and clear it out so my mother could get through, but there was the other side of the tracks as well. It had to be. So it was quite a long process. And then she would come home in the morning, and so before I'd go to school, we had to go out and shovel the tracks again, usually. I shoveled a lot of snow because of you, Archie. I suppose it gives me some character. That's what But growing up, the train was such a presence in my life. You know, in a small town, when the train goes by, everything stops. Everybody stops, and everybody watches the train, counts the cars, and there's something really special about that. Here in my old age, every time I hear a train whistle, I think of you, and I think of the St. J and LC going past my house. And, you know, whenever I waved, Archie, you always waved back. And I wrote this song about it, and it's called the St. J and LC line. And Hank Williams sang of the lonesome sound, a freight train rolling by. I'll never hear again that diesel coming round the bend. I'm so lonesome I could cry. You could hear the whistle blow at every crossing, from here to Walden Heights. And now and then the Greensboro Bend on a clear, cold winter's night. Now there's just a trail. They've torn up all the rails. We've covered up everything else behind. Gone are the days of passengers and the freight on the same trail line. You could hear the whistle blow at every crossing, from here to Walden Heights. And now and then, Greensboro Bend on a clear, cold winter's night. And now and then, Greensboro Bend on a clear, cold winter's night. Off St. James, LC line.
Thank you, Steve. That was absolutely over the top. Many of you already know Archie well, and I understand that always leads to love for Archie. But some of us don't, so I'm going to give you a capsule of this incredible man's background. This is the story you told me. After leaving the Navy in 1954, Archie pursued a railroad career. But cutbacks in the industry, changes in equipment, eliminated certain skilled jobs and general employment. But Archie was known in the yards from his early years and chased his dream. So the St. J and LC management took his card and said, "We'll get back in touch with you if we get a job available." So Archie went to work at the Fairbanks Scales to weigh his options, of course. And then came the call a year later. It turned out that diesel engines would need to generate steam, as all the passenger cars were heated with steam, wouldn't you know? So they would need firemen. Archie asked what he would do. Sit and look smart. So life began in a small bunkhouse with 6 others, with a coal stove like the Glenwood 8 there in the corner. And Archie was on his way. Not being shy, Archie quickly moved up to engineer and ran the rails for the SJ and LC line over the next decade. When the St. J and LC folded up its tent in '64, Archie moved on as engineer at the Canadian Pacific, running up from St. Johnsbury into Canada and back till he retired in 1993. In retrospect, Archie once said, "When you have a job you enjoy, you never have to work a day in your life." He loved running the trains. As Patty puts it, you can't say railroad without saying Archie Prevost. And you can't say Archie Prevost without saying railroad. After retirement, the coupling of Archie to the railroad continued, but in a new direction. Archie went to clown school in Orlando. When asked what his clown name would be, of course, wouldn't you guess? Choo Choo, the clown. Early on, he was known to entertain the waiting passengers of the CP, where he brought smiles to many, of course. He was in disguise, but a few of his friends spotted him. And then he went to work with a new name, Choo Choo, the Hobo Clown, emerging to the delight of passengers and employees of the Hobo Railroad in New Hampshire for the next 20 years. The railroad's owners were so taken with Archie and the kindness and laughter he brought to the passengers, they built a performing theater for him in 1970, on his 77th birthday, named, of course, the Choo Choo Theater. Asked how he felt about being a clown after the rigors of being an engineer, he responded, "As I get older, I get younger. If you can find a fun job like this, take it. It will keep you going. As clowns, we put teardrops into smiles and keep people coming back for more." I ask you, how can we find a better person to keep the Danville Train Station Committee on track with railroad knowledge and history and with a light and happy touch? So, Archie Prevost, we are pleased to appoint you as the Chairman Emeritus of the Danville Train Station Committee. And if you will join me here, I will make it official by reading the citation. So, in recognition of accomplishments, the Danville Select Board appoints Yiel T. Archie Prevost, Chairman Emeritus of the Danville Train Station Committee. During this distinguished railroading career, spanning 3 decades, Archie Prevost was the engineer that ran the rails for the SJ and LC line. The town of Danville prospered as the SJ and LC delivered goods beyond its borders, brought back needed supplies, while also creating fond memories for its passengers. Archie's determination, tempered by humor, moved tons of freight up and down the steep hills and rolling valleys during all kinds of track conditions. Archie brings a wealth of knowledge to the history of the Danville train station and its reemergence as a catalyst to Danville's economy and as a center of recreational activity. In recognition of his accomplishments, the Select Board of the town of Danville hereby appoints Archie Prevost, Chairman Emeritus of the Danville Train Station Committee. You're welcome to say something or nothing. Tell them about taking ice cream from one side of the train over to Greensboro.
You want to take it off? You can take that off, I think. Just
Yes.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah.
well, thank you very much for I'm very good at this. A lot of memories. Can't do it.
We're just happy to have you here.
Yes, absolutely. I'll give Archie a chance to pull back. So I said to Archie, I said, what are some of your fun stories to tell? And he said, you know, Greensboro Bend, where somebody put the track all the way up like this and all the way back around the town. He said, we were so fast, we were to get up the turn. I'd step out of the train. I'd walk over to the ice cream parlor. I'd get ice cream. I'd go back over on the other side, step right onto the train without missing a beat.
There you go.
We won't mention the time you look back and all the telephone poles are falling down.
Those stories we don't want to tell. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of memories, and like they say, if you enjoy your work, you never work a day in your life. So I've been unemployed all my life. Sitting on my rear end and just enjoying. And it, you know, I always call this is a Disney World of Vermont. St. John's Reed to Greensboro Bend. It's nothing, anything. You can't find any better beauty. And it's great. Anyways.
Well, I think that'd be a good time we can get him to cut the cake.
Okay, I can do that.
Sometimes the weight of the world on my shoulders is more than I can stand alone. Each day I feel I get a little older. There's so much to say and do before all is said and done. These and calloused, these two hands know that life is hard. This heart of mine, it beats strong and true in my heart. I still long for you. I long to hold you in these two hands.
Okay.